Let's talk about peer pressure. So now peer pressure can be a positive thing. Our friends can get us to do things that maybe feel a little scary, that kind of push us out of our comfort zone, that get us to challenge ourselves to try something new. In fact, my entire business was created because a friend kind of peer pressured me into it. She pushed me, she said, you should totally do this. And I said, no. And she said, yes, you should. And here we are years later. So peer pressure has a positive place in our society. But as we know, it often has very negative implications. It can get our kids to do things that they wouldn't normally do. So again, this starts with the foundation of getting our kids around good friends who won't push them into doing things that aren't so great. But we all know that's not the reality of life. Our kids are going to get around kids who maybe are going to peer pressure them into doing things that aren't safe or aren't kind or aren't lining up with our family values. And we can't just cross our fingers and hope that our kids will remember what to do. We have to set them up for success when it comes to peer pressure. We have to talk about things before they ever happen, before we ever think that we're gonna need to, so that when our kids are faced with so tricky social situations, they feel confident and know what to do. So now remember, our kids and us, we're the sum of the 5 people we spend the most time with. So if we set them up to spend time with kids who are not gonna peer pressure them into doing dangerous things, then that's fantastic. But if we don't know who their friends are yet, or if their friends maybe sometimes make crummy choices too, because again, that's reality, or maybe we haven't guided them away from these friends yet, we need to set them up. So we need to talk about a couple really important things with our kids. We have to be very intentional about these conversations. We need to say to them, just because your friend is mean doesn't mean it's okay for you to be mean. So they need to know that their friend's behavior doesn't have to be their behavior. We also tell our kids that they can say no to their friends. So we're raising kind kids, and oftentimes people are like, well, my kid doesn't ever want to say no, he doesn't want to upset people. They have to be able to say no. They have to be able to find that inner confidence so that they can make safe choices for themselves. So they can have to know it's okay to say no. It's okay to disagree. It's okay to say that's not right for me. They don't always have to say yes. In fact, they need to be kind to themselves sometimes, or kind to others, by saying no to their friends. And they need to know that they don't have to go along with whatever their friends are doing. They have to choose what's right for them. I mean, we were raised in the age where it's like, well, if your friend jumped off a bridge, would you do it too? That was the peer pressure conversations that we would have, but we often had them after we'd already made the crummy decision to, jump off the bridge. So we need to have these conversations before our kids are standing on the bridge. Basically, we need to let them know it's okay to say no to friends. It's okay to choose what's right for you. In fact, that's what we need you to do. When I'm not there, you need to stop and think, is this okay for our family? Is this okay for me? Is this a safe choice for my body? Is this kind? Is this lining up with who I am? And if it doesn't, then I need to walk away. I need to remove myself from the situation. And they need to know that you're a safe place, that if they come to you and tell you, this is happening, this almost happened, I almost did this, but I walked away, we need to praise them for that. That's incredibly, incredibly hard. One of the hardest things is standing up to a bully, but even harder is standing up to a friend. So giving our kids that confidence and practicing, they have to know that they can walk away from friends, or in this case, friends, because these are not true friends that are trying to pressure them into doing unsafe or unkind or things that make them feel bad about themselves. Getting them to pressure them to do those things, those aren't real friends. And letting our kids know that is really powerful. If a friend is telling you, if you don't do this, I won't be your friend anymore. If you don't do this, you can't hang out with us anymore. Those should be red flags. They're not real friends. They're not going to have your best interests at heart. They're making you do something that feels unsafe or not right. If your gut tells you something's wrong, you can walk away. And we have to let our kids know this. It's crucial, especially as they get older, and then they're faced with even trickier situations like drinking and drugs and sexual situations. They have to know that they can walk away and that we will be there and support them when they do walk away. And even if they forget and sometimes dabble their toe in the water, we will be there when we bring them back. So we tell them, if you were a real friend, you can say this to your friends. If you were a real friend, you wouldn't make me do something I don't want to do. So one of the simplest ways is to talk to our kids about these things before. And we can do that with role playing. We can talk about tricky situations. So if someone's mean to you, my daughter was peer pressured into writing a mean girl note to somebody else. This group didn't like this other little girl, and they pressured my daughter to writing this girl a note saying, you can't play with us. Here's why we don't like you. That was a hard moment, and we walked through that together, and we had a lot of correcting to do, and we moved away from these friends. But I spent a lot of time talking to my daughter. You knew this wasn't right. You knew this wasn't kind. You knew this didn't feel good, and you knew it was going to hurt her feelings. What could you do next time? You could say no. You could say, I don't want to do that. You can get help from an adult because somebody's going to get hurt. You can tell me and I will help you. You can stand up to your friend. You can ignore them. You can do all sorts of things. So giving them these tools, walking them through these moments. Or my son got into a skerfuffle with another boy, and one of his friends said, oh, you should flip him off. So my son now knows, because luckily he knew not to do this. He knew to not be peer pressured by this, to say, oh, that's not a good idea. I'm not going to do that. So he knew not to do that. Another big peer pressure thing that's happening in my children's social circle is telling groups of girls, you shouldn't play with her anymore because of X, Y, and Z. You shouldn't be friends with her. So letting my kids know that that's not okay. So one way we can help our kids with these situations is by role playing. So if we know something that's happening out in the playground, or our kids are struggling with something, we can talk them through it. So for example, my youngest got hooked in with some nasty little peer pressure. A group of girls told her to write a mean note to another little girl saying, we don't want to play with you, we don't want to be friends with you anymore, and my daughter did it. So we had to spend a lot of time talking about that and making amends and working on staying away from this peer group. But we also talked about, what could you say the next time somebody tells you to do something that you know is not right, that you know doesn't feel good, that you know is unkind, that you know is going to hurt this little girl's feelings? What could you say? You could say, I won't do that. That's not okay. You can't tell me to do that. If you're my friend, you're not going to make me do that. So giving her these words are going to be tools for her that she can use when the stakes are higher, when she's dealing with something scarier, like older kid pressure, peer pressure for our tweens and our teens. It's so intense. They have to have these skills now when it's about writing mean girl notes. Or like my son, he was peer pressured into flipping somebody else off. Luckily, in that moment, he knew he could say something to his friend and say, no, I'm not going to do that. That's ridiculous. That's rude. That's wrong. I'm not going to do that. Because we had talked about these situations, that you can say no to a friend, you can tell them it's not right for you, you can stand up to friends. Another social situation that we practice a lot is when a friend or a group of friends, I'm using the word loosely here, says, oh, you shouldn't play with her anymore. We're not going to play with her anymore. Purposeful exclusion. It's a form of bullying. It's relational bullying or social emotional bullying. And this is where it can snowball so quickly. And this happened in my elementary school when I was a kid. Somebody decided that this one kid was kind of banned. They had the cheese touch or the cooties or whatever you want to call it, and nobody was allowed to play with her. And it was absolutely horrific. But we can walk our kids through this, and we can say, this isn't right. We know this isn't right. This doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to her. It doesn't feel good to me. I'm not this person. I can say no to my friends. I can go and sit with her. So it's tricky because we don't want to ostracize our kids. We don't want to set them up to then become the next target. And I get all of that. So you've got to find the right balance for your family. But the main point of all of this is to have these conversations before you think you're going to need it. So if you have young kids, please know that these kinds of behaviors, this peer pressure, happens shockingly young. We're talking kindergarten. That mean girl note my daughter wrote, kindergarten. I didn't know to have that conversation with her. I know now, so I'm telling you, don't make my mistake and wait too long. This stuff is happening. So our kids, our young kids have to know they can say no to their friends. They can walk away. They don't have to do what other people tell them, other kids tell them to do. If they know it's not right, they can walk away. Okay, in the next module, we're going to be talking about actually one of the kindest things our kids can do for other kids that makes them one of the best kids to be friends with on the playground. I'm going to share that with you in the next module.